Well, hey there, everybody. Glad to have you on the blog this week, and I'm super excited to introduce to you my guest for this week, Lori Keesey. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Dina. How are you?
Good. So happy to have you here. We've had a nice little chat before we started the recording. So uh, we
We
did,
probably
didn't
should
we?
have started recording minutes ago, right, Dina?
I know. We shared a lot of good stuff. And we're going to have some good stuff for you too in this interview. So I want to just start out by having Lori introduce herself to you guys and tell a little bit about her and her family. So I'm going to give it to you, Lori.
Well, thank you, Dina. Like she said, my name is Lori Keesey. I call myself a wife, a mom, a friend, a daughter, a sister. I started writing when I was a little kid,
Mm,
goofy little stories. I really found I guess an item on my for my bucket list when I read To Kill a Mockingbird. I absolutely, and to this day, it is one of my favorite books
mm,
because the writing takes you there. You're there in Macomb County, Alabama. You're outside looking at that little girl, on her tire swing and her brother and Dill. And that I said, you know what? I want to write at least one book.
mm,
And so I went into journalism. I went to the University of Maryland. I'm from Maryland, born and raised outside the DC area. Actually, I was born in DC and was raised in Maryland outside of DC. Met my husband and went into journalism, majored in journalism, and had jobs as a newspaper reporter before becoming a communication consultant in 1993. I've
mm.
been in freelance since then, um,
Wow.
on my own.
Wow. So lots of experience there. And we were talking beforehand, you no longer live in DC. You live in the beautiful state of Tennessee.
That's right. And so happy we're here.
Yes.
My husband and I say this is the smartest move we ever made.
Yeah.
When we first moved here, I felt like I was going to the land of Oz
Mm,
because, the DC area is very hustle bustle. There's sweet people everywhere. I'm not saying that, but it's the hustle bustle. And when we got here, even going inside the Kenjo, a
mm,
teenage boy would rush to open the door for me. This
mm.
was astounding. I'd never seen.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. No,
Oh,
ma'am.
I know.
No, I'm like stunned. I said, yes, this is where I need to be. So
Yes, that's definitely one thing when we go home to visit every year and we go through a restaurant drive-through, I get called honey, sweetie, baby, whatever. There's all kinds of little sweet nicknames in the South.
I know, and there's some people who would take. This was years ago. I was working for McGraw Hill in DC, working at the National Press Building, and one of the ladies I worked with, some old gent would call her honey or
Mm.
something like. And she took great offense. I'm thinking, why are you taking offense? It's better than called something else
I
that we can't
know.
even say here on the Zoom call. And
Yeah,
Lord knows people talk like that to one another.
I know.
So I love it. You can call me sweet pea, honey
Uh-huh.
pie all day long.
Yep.
I'm going to
Yep.
gobble it up.
I know. I love it. I miss it too. I enjoy it when we go home. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about your writing and what inspired you to step into novel writing? Because the book we're going to talk about today is your first novel. You have lots of writing experience in nonfiction and in the corporate world and all of that. But what made you want to write a novel?
Well, as I said earlier, it was always on my mind. It's always been on my bucket list since I was 15, 16 years old. And Dina, I tried. I sat down on many occasions saying, I'm going to start that book. I'm going to start that book. And it's so funny, the words would come, but the story didn't.
Mm,
And so I would get frustrated and I'd put it down. I'd forget about it. I'd pursue, the journalistic style writing, which it is. I love doing it. I love writing personality profiles and things like that. Um, but I guess it was about almost 6 years ago. My family, we experienced a terrible tragedy. And that's when my life took a completely different trajectory.
mm,
And finally, I'm going through the grieving process and I am saying, okay, Lord, why did this happen?
mm,
why did you take my son?
Mm,
How can I turn this into something positive? What do you want me to do with this? And that, Dina, is when the story came. I'm not saying that there's death and destruction in Always Think of Me, but it laid the foundation because through my prayer and through my contemplation, I came to the true understanding. We're told this in church that we all have a purpose, that we all have a destiny, that the Lord makes great plans for us, and that we should never fear. But it didn't really hit my heart until after this tragedy when
mm,
I realized, oh, yes,
mm,
we all do have a purpose. And it doesn't matter if it's big or small. Um, if we fail to do our purpose, we might prevent someone else from doing his or her purpose. And that would be a tragedy.
mm,
So that is the central theme of Always Think of Me.
mm. So
Purpose.
is it inspired by or based on your experience of losing your son?
No,
No. Okay.
not totally. Um, it's just the understanding of really getting to understand the old idea that we really need to. The world teaches us that we're only valuable based on how much influence you have. My goodness, you see all these influencers on various social media platforms, or depending on how much money you make or what kind of job you have. Sometimes we don't understand that helping someone else, being a friend to someone in need, is perhaps the greatest
Mm,
purpose of all.
mm,
And there was a book, Owen Meany, written years ago. It's about that little guy. They ended up turning it into a movie. And he's little and he has this weird squeaky voice, and kids make fun of him. And he comes from a terrible background. His parents are very strange. And as it turns out, that his purpose was to save some Vietnamese children. And because of his high pitched voice, he was able to speak to these children in Vietnamese with the proper accent so that they
mm,
moved. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that. That was his purpose.
mm.
He didn't know that growing up.
No. Wow. It just really makes you think about how all of the tragedies and the really difficult experiences that we go through in this life, and my goodness, we could be here all day talking about those, but how God steps in and uses all of those difficulties to teach us, to grow us, to direct us, and give us the path. Even me starting to write novels was because of a difficult season I went through,
Mm-hmm.
looking for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to overcome this
Mm-hmm.
depression and this
Mm-hmm.
struggle I'm going through? And that led me to
Mm-hmm.
writing.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses everything. And
Absolutely.
mm,
And I also started a blog. I call it the accidental blogger because I never had any intention of becoming a blogger.
mm,
And what I made the purpose of the blog to write about real people who overcome adversity or any, it really is a broad topic. I mean, I can talk about child trafficking. I can talk about the wonderful people who have, like, one's coming out tomorrow, the dirtiest of all jobs. And this man truly has the dirtiest of all jobs because he is a police detective, and he has this horrible job of tracking down internet crimes against children.
mm,
And he believes it's his calling on his life to protect these children from evildoers. And I want to herald these people.
mm,
I want to tell stories about women who've also lost their sons and what they had to do to get over that, to overcome. Yeah, I want to talk about the story of my mom. Oh my goodness. This is again kind of a supernatural thing. She was very sick in the hospital, and she really wanted to die. It was during COVID and no one could come and see her. And she was praying to Jesus, I just want to die.
mm,
And she hears this voice. well, if I take, well, number one, he says to her, I don't want you yet, which I think is hilarious. If you knew my mother, you'd crack up. She's a wild thing. And then he said, well, if I take you now, you'll never get to see the miracle baby.
Mm,
4 months later, my mom is now on the mend, and my niece, who had a terrible event happen. She had a ectopic pregnancy, and her fallopian tube, at least the one side, exploded. And the doctor said, you may never conceive again. And plus, she's in her 40s, or she's about to be 40, and she's kind of getting, a little older, and she has an older child. And lo and behold, guess what?
mm,
She's pregnant, and she tells my mother that. Is
wow,
that not, does
mm,
that not give you goosebumps?
that's God. That's
That's God. Yes.
how he
I
does
don't
things,
want you
right?
yet. And you're never going to see the miracle baby.
Mm,
He had that planned.
yes. He knows when we're supposed to be born, when we're supposed to die. He's got it all
Hmm.
mapped out, right?
That's right. And he has plans to prosper you. And and then when you're feeling down and lonely or what have you, I think it's important that you remember that. And that getting back to your purpose.
Hmm.
When I started writing the novel, um, suicides had started to rapidly increase. This was several years ago. There are a lot of, fentanyl overdoses, the opioid crisis, the whole thing, people just committing suicide. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if people really understood that they have a purpose, they have a job that only they can do, would they have killed themselves or would they have attempted suicide? And
Yeah.
I know it might sound Pollyannish, but I don't think they would.
Mm,
They would jump up every morning and say, okay, what am I? What is the special thing I need to do today? And
yeah.
I'm not talking evil doing or hacking into somebody's computer or doing that kind of thing. There are a lot of people who do that. I mean, something positive to help someone else. Because let's face it, Dina, that's our highest calling.
Yes.
We are supposed to encourage one another.
Makes me think of a good friend of mine, and she's probably going to be watching this recording. She says every morning before she gets out of bed, excuse me, she says, "Okay, God, what are we going to do today?"
I
So
love that.
it's really just saying, "My life is yours, and whatever you have for me, that's what I want to do."
That's right, because it's his will and not yours. And Lord knows we humans battle that. We battle that. I
Mhm.
can do it better. I have do a Bible study in the small group. She's a hoot, and she's from this area, and she has the most awesome accent. And she's always saying, "Oh, you can have it." No, I'll take that back. Let me carry that big old burden. Nobody really needs that big old burden.
Mhm. So let's talk a little bit more about your book. And the title of it again is Always Think of Me.
Hmm.
Your novel. Do you have a copy of it there?
Oh, I do. I'll see if I
You want
can
to
put it up.
show it? There we go. Always think of me. Congratulations on that, by the way. I can imagine, since I don't have a book published yet, holding your novel in your hands that you poured your heart and soul into for
Yeah,
maybe years, years on my end.
and mine too.
It's got to be such a surreal feeling.
It
Uh,
is.
yeah,
Thought
so
it never happened.
that's exciting. So, talk a little bit about the story and without spoilers, maybe a little bit about the characters and what it's
Okay.
about. Maybe a character that was easier for you to write, and one that maybe was difficult for you to write, and why.
Okay. Always Think of Me is written primarily for women, but I do believe a man might enjoy it too, especially a man who's experienced love sickness or he's been hurt by a woman, because that is indeed the case with the protagonist TC. TC is a 30 something party guy. He is loves outdoor music festivals, and he meets at an outdoor music festival. He meets the woman of his dreams, and they forge or they strike up a conversation completely unexpected just through this confluence of events, and they end up getting very, very, very close. And it's not a physical thing. They're inside each other's heads. They understand one another. And then she leaves abruptly, and he thinks he'll never see her again. And he moves on until a year or so later, when he finds himself on an otherworldly mission where he is going to see her again. He must overcome his own insecurities and doubts and stop her from doing the unthinkable.
Mm,
So it's a love story. It's just a very uncommon one. And it's about friendship and do-overs. And I'm hoping that people read this novel and say, wow, I have a different perspective. Or, wow, my eyes have been opened to situations in this world. And I need to look at this differently because the book addressed a lot of social ills. I mean, it's toxic relationships because Ginny is involved in a unbelievably toxic relationship. She has her Granny Smith, who is steadfast. She's the rock in Ginny's life. Ginny is deeply traumatized by something that happened to her in her childhood. I don't want to go into it deeply, but she's traumatized sense of abandonment. I mean, the list goes on. And TC never experienced those things. His childhood was idyllic, you know? So
mm,
he didn't have to rely on God.
mm,
He didn't have to, she did. And then the tables turn. And I'm going to leave it there.
mm. So where is the setting of this story?
Well, the setting, it takes place, the outdoor festival takes place in Tennessee.
Woohoo!
Um, yeah, yeah, whoop, whoop. Um, Atlanta, Georgia,
Okay.
South Carolina, Spartanburg County to be exact, where I was a newspaper reporter. Um, the DC area is mentioned, Baltimore is mentioned, Maryland's Eastern Shore, not Eastern Shores, Southern Maryland is mentioned. Where else? Oh, and then one of the characters is from the Mississippi Delta,
Okay.
and her cohort is from the mean streets of Boston.
Okay.
So I have a lot of different characters. Oh, and then one of my favorite characters, she's a funny little thing, itty bitty girl, and she runs a mountain tourism type business. She takes people out on camping trips into the Great Smoky Mountains,
Ah.
and she always says, twang is my thing. And she's all about the hillbilly marketing. You know, she goes, these Yankees want hillbilly is what they're gonna get. And she just
Hmm.
pours on the stories. She's a character. I really enjoyed her.
Yeah, it sounds fun. That sounds fun. So what about pets? Are there any animals in the story? Or,
Yes, in fact, the prologue starts with Georgie, the brindled goofball of a canine. Oh yes, Georgie exists. He's real. He's and he is a brindled goofball of a canine who makes friends wherever he goes.
mm-hmm.
So yes, there is a pet.
So the focus of my writing and my blog and doing these interviews, it's hope-filled fiction. So
Hmm.
I'm all about hope and, extending hope through our writing and our stories. How do you go about that, or did you go about that for this novel, incorporating Christ and hope into this story?
In spite of everything that happens here and people's personal struggles, there is there is hope, and it's through
Mhm,
our faith.
mhm,
And some people come to faith a little later than others, and some people need to be reminded of faith. And
mhm,
all this plays into this novel.
mhm, mhm. That sounds good. We all need that reminder, right?
We do. Because we can get so caught up. I mean, I've gotten to the point where before I even get out of bed, I turn on a prayer. I listen to soothing music with someone talking over the music. I don't want to, I can't get up every morning without having God right there because let me tell you, I can go in places I don't want to go. And a
Mhm,
lot of it's the doubts. You
mhm,
know, oh boy, who do I think I am? You know, no one's going to like this book. And who's saying that to you? It's not God. He's
mhm,
not saying that.
mhm. That's right.
So I really need fortification. I need Jesus.
Oh, yes. Amen. Amen, sister. So if somebody picks up your novel, when they get to the end and they close that back cover, what is your greatest desire for them to take away from that experience? You know, we give hours to reading people's novels, time is precious. So, what do you want them to gain from that?
Regardless of what you've been through, your past is your past. Never look behind. Um, Look to the future. You
Mm,
do have a specific job to do. And if you're wondering what that is, pray to the Lord. He will show it to you and then be obedient and follow it. Again, we all have a job to do. We are not random. Some
mm,
people might want to tell you you're random and that you don't really matter, but it's not truth. It's a lie.
that's right. That's right. So, was this novel something that's a one and done, or do you have plans to write more novels? Do you have something in the works now? What can we look for next from you?
Well, Dina, we were talking about that earlier and about what do I want to do when I grow up.
Hmm.
Um, I'm really on the fence. Writing this novel was very difficult for me, and it kind of surprised me it was so difficult.
Mm,
But I had to go on a bit of a steep learning curve. There is a novel there you could do a sequel to this quite easily. But I think what I want to concentrate on first is really focus on short story writing. I really like that platform. It makes you tell your story, character development, all in a very short space. It's good practice. And I've
yeah.
written two already, but I have a million ideas.
Mm.
And and I think about my childhood and some of the weird things that I saw and I had a great childhood. I had an interesting family. They were great storytellers and they'd sit around the table and tell stories. I mean, and I think that's how I want to go. I'm going to continue doing my blog because I find great joy in that. And I also offer a monthly letter to subscribers, which is, more freewheeling. I don't necessarily have to focus on adversity, but, I can just offer my opinion on things. And that's kind of fun too because I'm highly opinionated. Ask anyone who knows me.
They aren't we
Um,
all?
so I think, I'm going to focus. I write every day. And I'm going to think long and hard, pray long and hard on more novels.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you wrote this one. And it's going to go on my want to read list because I've enjoyed the conversation we've had surrounding it today and what it's about and the message that it's going to give to people. So I'm excited about that, and excited that you're going to be giving away a copy to one of our listeners
That's
this
right.
week. So if you want a chance to win Lori's book, guys, make sure you scroll all the way down to the comments section after this and engage in conversation. Let's talk about hope-filled fiction and help us get the word out about Lori's book so more people can read this and have that hope in Christ through this story. So
Well,
thank you,
thank you, Dina.
Lori, for being
Yeah.
here. It's been such a pleasure meeting you and talking with
Yes,
you, and I feel like I've made a friend today.
you absolutely have. Best wishes to you and your endeavors. You're going to do it, girl.
That's the goal.
There you go.
All right, thank you for joining,
Thank.
and we'll see you on social media and on the blog and all of those things. So talk.
Okay, Dina. Take care.